Okay, so this is right polynomial functions when given the zeros. So some things to remember. We've been talking a lot about zeros, but zeros are solutions to the polynomial when it is set equal to 0. So just as an example, we can remember something like this. When I gave you this, or we factored it out and we set it equal to 0, we were solving it by saying, well, I know that I have multiplication going on. So either this number equals 0 or this number equals 0, because some number times another number equals 0, one of them must be equal to 0. So the way I solve it is I set each of them equal to 0, right? X plus 4 equals 0. So if I set them each equal to 0, I can find out what my answer is. I get 3x equals 2, divide by 3, and yes, you are going to get fractions. Don't let that worry you. In fact, this is working it forward. Today we're going to be working it backward. So there's one of my answers. The other one is real quick. I get x equals -4. So these are my zeros. Okay, so remember that whatever we have here, when we write it in its factored form, the numbers always do what? Remember, with fractions, the number on the bottom always goes out front, the number up top always goes out behind, and we change the sign, right? So let's take a look at some examples of what we're actually going to do today. So first example is, it says write the function that has the given zeros. So I have 5, I have -5, and I have -1. So these are the zeros. These are what x equals when we have it set equal to 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this out as factors. And remember, if these are the zeros, then that means I have my x's, and I'm always going to change the sign. So since this is positive, I'm going to make that negative, and since this is negative, I'm going to make this positive, and this is negative, so I'm going to make it positive. So what I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to find the polynomial that equals, or that has all these zeros, and this is how we do it. So here's it in its factored form. We need to write it all the way worked out, or multiplied out. So basically I'm just going to do what I normally do, except it's going to take some time. So I like the box. I'm going to go ahead and write my box. And I'm going to start with x minus 5 and x plus 5. So I get x squared, I get -5x, I get 5x, and -25. Okay, remember with the box, we always add those together, and in this case we have a positive and a negative, so they cancel each other out. So my final, at least this portion, would be writing this polynomial out. I get x squared plus 0, so I don't write it, minus 25. But I haven't multiplied this in, so really what I have is this times this. So now I have to multiply that out. So again, I'm going to use the box. And again, you can use any method you want. You can use FOIL. But I like using the box. So in this case, since our exponents do not match, we're not going to be able to add our terms here. But let's see what we get. X times x squared is x cubed. X times -25 is -25x. 1, well, that's just x squared, positive, and this is going to be -25. So here I actually don't end up with what I normally end up with. These two don't add together. These are not like terms. But my final answer, or my function, would equal x cubed, and then add x squared minus 25x. I always want to put them in standard form. Start with my highest exponent and work my way down. Minus 25. Okay? So there is my polynomial written out with these zeros. Okay? So let's try it one more time, except now I gave you two fractions. But remember, in the first example, when we were working it out backwards, I gave you the answer was a fraction. So remember, the number on the bottom goes out front. So I end up with 3x, and I change my sign. So I'm going to do the same here. The number on the bottom goes out front. This is a positive, so I'm going to make it negative. And this is a positive, so I'm going to make it negative. Okay? So again, I have to multiply these out. I'm going to leave this one to the end because this one's easier. I'm going to multiply these two together first, since it'll make my life easier after I do this. So let's do 3x and 1 there, 2x minus 5 there. Multiply it out, I get 6x squared, 1, that's 2x, negative 5, that's negative 15x, and negative 5 right there. So this time, because my exponents, they're both to the same power, my diagonals do add together. So let's add those. We get 6x squared. I can add those two numbers there. Negative 15 plus 2 is negative 13x, and minus 5. Again, I still have another multiplication to do. So now I got to multiply those out. And just to save some time, I'm going to put my box right underneath that so I don't have to rewrite everything. Save me some time. Start moving again. So x times 6x squared is 6x cubed, negative 13x squared, negative 5x. Times negative 1, that means just change the sign of everything. So negative 6x squared plus 13x squared. Oops, this isn't squared, this is just x, and this is positive 5. So, here we go. 6x cubed. There's no other cubes, so I'm good there. These, let's see what happens here. Here, I do end up with diagonals that add up. And so I end up with, let's see, negative 13 and negative 6 is negative 19 x squared. 13 and minus 5, that's positive 8 x and plus 5. So here's my answer. Again, basically we're just multiplying, but the hard part is getting your factors or knowing what these should end up looking like. And remember, basically all we're doing with the numbers is we're just changing the sign. We have a fraction, the bottom number comes out front, last number goes in the back, and again, change the sign. So basically just combining things that we've already learned in this lesson. Please be prepared.